Welcome to our event. So we're looking at how AI is transforming student assessment in international education. With advancements in generative AI tools such as ChatGPT being utilised by students, educators must consider new ways to measure student learning. From automated grading systems to personalised learning assessments, educators are navigating new opportunities and challenges in how they measure and support student success. Okay, we are really excited for this event today, and we're going to launch straight in. And kick-starting our session today, we have the brilliant Mandy DePriest. So Mandy is the curriculum and content developer at AI for Education. She has extensive experience as an educator and an instructional coach. Thank you so much for joining us, Mandy, and for kind of starting this session for us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Claire. We love this topic at AI for Education, and we appreciate ISN for facilitating these kinds of conversations. We strongly believe that there really are no experts at this point, that it is through collective conversation and democratic discussion that we will arrive at new norms. So I don't have the answer, but we have the answer through conversations like this. So I'll go ahead and share out my screen, and we do have some polls that we prepared, Claire, right, that you're going to launch for me just to give me a better sense of our audience and who we're talking to today. And so while Claire is launching those, I will just give you a little bit of an intro about AI for Education and myself. We are a US-based company that is committed to bringing AI literacy to teachers around the world because we just feel very strongly that regardless of your personal feelings about AI, everyone is going to have to grapple with it at some point, whether it's answering questions from a student or dealing with suspected misuse or even leaning into it and incorporating it into your practice to kind of transform and extend what you're able to do as an educator. We believe you're better able to do that if you have this baseline level of AI literacy. Information is the antidote to fear and uncertainty, so we are committed to bringing that to everyone. So I can see from our poll that most of you are at least somewhat or very familiar with AI. That is great. That will help us as we move through, but I will try to contextualize some things as we go for those of you who are not very familiar or not at all familiar. Like Claire mentioned, quickly, I'll give you a bit about my background as you answer this second poll. What do you see as the biggest challenges to integrating generative AI in your context? While you are answering that, I have 15 years of experience in the US public school systems in a variety of roles. I was a classroom teacher. I was a library media specialist. I saw we had at least one librarian here, so shout out to you. And I was a technology coach. I've also taught education technology to pre-service teachers at the college level here in the US. And so I just really believe very strongly in technology's transformative power to prepare our students for a modern world. And I've been with AI for Education for over a year now. And I really love talking about this topic. So we may have to come back to the poll, Claire, because I'm going to go ahead and launch my slides and we'll get right to it. Today we're talking about assessment. There we go. Okay, so primarily a lot of you are concerned about ethics. That's great because we're gonna touch on those today and have a really great discussion in the panel. I see lack of training is a big issue as well. We hear that a lot in our work at AI for Education. People feel that they just do not have the support in terms of professional development and learning to really fully implement AI. And then I see uncertainty about pedagogical value as well. Surprisingly low resistance from stakeholders. Normally we get a lot of that as well. And so I'm excited to address these as we go through the presentation. Thank you for sharing that information with us. Okay, so let's jump right into assessment. And I like to start with this traditional view that many educators take of assessment, which is that knowledge and understanding exists inside students' brains, inside of their heads, right? And so what we need as educators is a window into their thinking so that we can measure it, evaluate it, and assign a grade. And traditionally, that window has been writing, based on the assumption that if students can think it, they can write it. And so an essay or a report or something to that effect is the quickest way to make their thinking visible so that we can assess it. And there are many reasons why this might be a flawed assumption, and writing may not be the best medium for every student in every context, whether they're neurodivergent or have a learning disability or are working in a non-native language. We've had cause to rethink this for some time, but we just haven't gotten around to it as a profession. And then along comes generative AI, which brings with it a seismic shift. It sort of forces our hand because writing is no longer a reliable window into students' thinking. It's cloudy, it's a dirty window, it's broken, we can't trust it anymore. You often see AI compared to a calculator in terms of its disruption on educational practices. We at AI for Education, among ourselves, will often describe it as a calculator for the humanities in the sense that they can simply press a button and generate an output, and sort of offload a lot of the cognitive lift that we associate with strong learning. So what do we do? Well, I pulled this slide from our flagship training, which is Introduction to Generative AI for Educators. And when we deliver this training virtually or in person, we've spent the better part of an hour talking about what generative AI is and how it works, and then all of its applications in education. And we get here and we say, we know what you're thinking that we haven't talked about yet, the elephant in the room. Can't students use this to cheat? And the short answer is yes, definitely. And this is a natural concern of educators. So if you've ever felt gaslit by people saying, oh, it's wonderful, you have to get with the times, you have to teach them these modern skills, and you've felt like your concerns have been brushed off or glossed over, I'm here to validate your feelings. This is definitely a valid concern. However, I will help you contextualize it a little bit, and encourage you to think about the fact that cheating has always existed. As long as there has been school, there has been cheating, right? I'm convinced there were ancient Greeks looking at stone tablets hidden under benches back in the day. Students are just cheating differently. And we have some evidence to support this, namely the Lee and Pope study, Victor Lee and Denise Pope out of Stanford here in the US. We're already conducting stories or studies on academic dishonesty and found that in 2023, which was the year after ChatGPT was released in November of 2022, 60 to 70% of high school students that they surveyed responded that they had engaged in some kind of cheating behavior in 2023. And this number was statistically insignificant from the percentage that they had discovered in 2022. So it's not that students are cheating more, it's that they're cheating differently. And we as educators have been aware of cheating as an issue for a long time, but we kind of felt more comfortable dealing with the kind of old-fashioned method of cheating, right? Because we knew what to look for, we had developed strategies to respond to it, and now this feels like a totally new thing that naturally creates some uncertainty. And so everyone's kind of very upset about this. But to me, it is a little reassuring that cheating levels have remained stable, and we can eventually develop those same strategies and that same comfort level with AI-based cheating that we have with sort of traditional methods of cheating. It's kind of a funny way to think about it. But so I'll tell you what we do not think is the answer at AI for Education. And these are kind of the knee-jerk things that a lot of people go to. They think about, well, AI detectors, tools like Turnitin or GPT-0 will help me catch AI cheating. And the first thing I would urge you to consider there is that may help you identify text that has been generated by AI, but does it help you identify students who used AI to brainstorm ideas if they weren't supposed to, or students who used it to generate an outline, which they wrote the paper from if you didn't want them to do that? So there are lots of applications of AI that might not be present in the text that an AI detector would not be able to catch. I mean, these tools in general have inaccuracy rates that we need to be aware of. They can do false positives and false negatives, where they inaccurately identify text as AI generated when it was not, as well as text that will get past them. That's a false negative. And there are all sorts of creators on TikTok and Instagram talking kids through exactly how to get their material past an AI detector. So they are just not the silver bullet that we would like them to be, and they can't be the sole tool that we use to determine AI-based cheating. They've also been found to be biased against non-native English speakers in a number of studies as well. So we don't encourage folks to use those. Another thing we hear a lot is, well, I'm just going back to pencil and paper. They're just going to write in blue books, in class, under my eye, and that's how we're going to do it. Which is not to say that there is not a role for in-class writing. In fact, I think that's a good skill for students to practice in certain contexts, but it shouldn't be the only method that you use going forward for assessment. First of all, because it's going to present obstacles to students with learning disabilities. And second of all, it's going to deny them the opportunity to develop necessary digital skills, down to just keyboarding and file sharing and uploading and downloading and things like that. We know they need to develop those skills as we prepare them to matriculate into college and career. So what do we do? First, we need to kind of reframe the conversation. We need to start thinking beyond cheating, because if we only discuss AI with students in that context, in that negative framing, first of all, it creates an adversarial relationship between teachers and students, it undermines that trust. So imagine sitting down in the first day of a new class and you're excited to learn, and the instructor comes in and says, I know that you're all going to cheat. And when you do, I'm going to catch you. That is automatically going to kind of erode any potential rapport and relationship that you might develop with those teachers. And I've spoken to quite a few teenagers who are very anxious about this because they know that AI detectors are being used, that they're not always accurate, and they're very afraid that they're going to be accused of cheating and have no proof otherwise. It's their word against the detector. It also discourages open dialogue. It creates this surveillance culture where students feel like they have to hide AI use. They're whispering in the halls about this teacher knows about it, this teacher doesn't. Here's how you can get by. Here are tips and tricks. And it creates this tense surveillance state that nobody enjoys. It also obscures the positive use cases of AI. I'm a strong believer in positive framing of things and visualizing the outcome that we want. So if we want a future where students are AI literate and everyone is using it in a balanced and appropriate way, then we need to have open conversations and about those specific use cases that we want them to become familiar with so that we can move them towards that purposefully and with intention, instead of just framing it as this is a bad thing that you shouldn't touch. And finally, it's just exhausting. I've spoken to a number of teachers, especially higher ed, who are very frustrated. They say, all I do anymore is hunt down AI cheating and respond to that. And I don't even get to teach my content anymore. And teachers are too busy and too burned out to spend all of their time policing AI use when there are better uses of their time that could move students closer to their learning goals. So we encourage you to consider reframing the conversation, and proactively discuss AI with your students. This encourages open conversations about appropriate use. It creates the conditions where you can build student AI literacy proactively so that they know when it would be appropriate to use it and when it would not. It encourages them to come to you with questions that they have instead of feeling like they have to hide it. They can ask, should I use AI in this context or do you not want me to? It sort of creates the conditions for that kind of open back and forth discussion. It also allows you to be proactive and guide student behavior with the benefit of your adult perspective. What we don't want is them to go into their rooms and close the door and figure out AI on their own or from social media or from things that they hear from their peers. And that's if they even have access to it, right? We know equity and accessibility is a big issue as well. And so we could widen the digital divide unintentionally by shutting AI out of schools. And finally, reducing the motivation to hide AI use and the accompanying need for teachers to police it. So we just take away the need for you to hide it. Like if you do try to deceive or anything, then there was no reason for you to do that because you could have come to me at any time and asked if it was appropriate. So that way we know that if something has happened, that there was an intentional misuse there. And I'm not trying to oversimplify this and say, well, just tell the students that you don't want them to use AI because we know that it's much more complicated than that, right? But what we're trying to do here is create the conditions wherein students can have an open conversation and we model making decisions with them and we make decisions together again and again and again until we sort of internalize these new professional norms and we get to a place where we're using AI with transparency, and responsibility. So before we move into like how we might want to reframe assessment in terms of the availability of AI, it's helpful to think about how you might determine what constitutes cheating using AI. And it kind of depends on your definition of cheating. If you're thinking of cheating as any kind of cognitive offload, wherein students are using any kind of tool to help them process or think information, then you may struggle a bit. I'm reading an excellent book right now called The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Paul. It's about all of the things outside of the brain that we use to support learning. I highly recommend it. But if you consider, and I do, as I do, that the quality, the standard that constitutes cheating is the deception, the element of trying to deceive the teacher into thinking learning has taken place when it has not, then there are things that you can do. So first of all, I would identify which concepts or skills students must grapple with in order to accomplish the learning goal. So like, this is what I need you to engage with, even if it's hard. Okay, clearly identify those to students in the assignment instructions and say, this is not something that you will be able to use AI. I need you to do this on your own. But then be open to considering AI use related to things that are not essential to that learning goal. So if the goal is for them to, explain the causes of World War II, then maybe they could use AI to check their grammar and spelling. Or if the goal is for them to write a paper where they support an argument with a claim, then maybe they are able to use AI to help synthesize research on the topic, things like that. And creating this kind of avenue where I'm open to it in some respects, but not to others, makes it less likely that students will cheat, and establishes that open line of communication with students, encourages them to ask if they're not sure. Okay, so in terms of assessment more broadly, moving beyond cheating, it helps us to kind of redefine in a certain sense. So if the old definition was kind of this point in time measurement of students' ability to recall specific information or perform a specific task on demand. So you sat down on a Tuesday morning and you took a test, and that's how I know what you understand about this topic. We want to kind of shift away from that into a new definition of assessment as an ongoing process, where we have multiple windows into the students' thinking to measure their conceptual understanding throughout, using a variety of application-based tasks that we anchor in durable skills. So if it's a writing task, for example, maybe we don't just grade the essay that they turn in at the end. Maybe we grade their brainstorming that they did at the beginning. We may grade their research. Maybe they turn in an annotated bibliography. We grade their first draft. So we take lots of smaller grades throughout, which gives you multiple points to check in with the student and talk to them about AI use and if it's been used and how it's been used. And also reduces the impetus to cheat, because there's no one assignment that is worth so much that it's going to fail you if you do poorly on it. So if you do poorly on one, you have opportunities to make up those points later on. And it also just gives you, a more contextualized understanding of that student's knowledge and skills. We were being a bit cheeky at AI for Education and came up with this graphic that it was time to retire traditional assessments like the 5-paragraph essay or multiple choice tests and things like that, which is not to say that I do think those have some value in certain contexts still, but we think they can no longer be your bread and butter. We've known for some time that these tend to focus on lower order thinking skills, tend to be disconnected from authentic tasks, and most notably now are vulnerable to AI misuse. So if I were to use an assignment like this today, I would want to make sure that I put a lot of supports in place to make sure that they were less vulnerable to AI. And we'll look at some ways to do that by creating AI resistant assessments. So ideally, they would focus on process, not product. So like I was talking about earlier with the writing assignment, going from brainstorming to research to drafting and looking at all of those throughout instead of just the final essay that they turn in. AI-resistant assessments tend to involve multiple rounds of feedback from the teacher, but also from peers, and even from AI. Students who are old enough to use the tools and have permission to use the tools can put their writing into them and ask for first-round feedback, which is very helpful. When I was teaching, I would often get bogged down in pretty low-level feedback with students writing instead of the main objective that I wanted to assess, because I was like, well, I'm really supposed to be looking at your ability to support an argument with a claim, but you've got all these grammatical errors. So there are things that AI could do for you that could save you some lifting and allow you to give more focused and targeted feedback later. Um, it's nice to have some kind of element of self-assessment or reflection, maybe a reference to your thought process or to a discussion you had with a peer, because those are the kinds of things that AI has trouble performing, referencing things that happened in real life. And finally, allowing for novel application of conceptual understanding. Maybe they're doing a project, they're making a website, they're doing a publicity campaign or something like that, where they're applying their learning in real world contexts that it is difficult for AI to replicate. So some examples of these kinds of assessments would be discussions and debates. I love oral performance tasks. I often cite an anecdote of when I was in college, I was in a philosophy class, and our professor invited us to his home the night before the final. It was a small class. There were only 9 or 10 of us. And we just had a discussion around his dinner table about all of the concepts that we covered in class. And at the end of the evening, he said, you know, it feels like the final exam at this point is redundant. I have a good understanding of all of your understandings of philosophy that we've covered in the class. So let's just cancel the test and we'll say everyone gets an A. And we were all very on board with that. But in addition to being less stressful for us as the students, we didn't have to sit down and take the long written exam anymore. It was also just fun and enjoyable. And he didn't have to then sit down and grade 10 papers. So he had a good understanding from our conversation and he felt confident in giving us the grade. So I cite that as an example of an authentic discussion task. But things like projects or presentations that involve something that they have to perform in class or demonstrate in class. AI has a hard time, with those types of tasks. They either know it or they don't. They've made it or they haven't. Creating a model, performing a demonstration or an experiment, participating in peer feedback or review, group work, oral exams, all of these things are examples of tasks that AI could not replicate. And if you're struggling to think of ways that you might implement these, thinking, well, I have all these assignments that I've already developed. How would I convert them into a discussion or into a presentation or into a project? Ask AI, ask ChatGPT or Claude or one of those others. Say, here's an assignment that I've always done. Help me convert it into a discussion. Or if the task still needs to be writing, ask it for ideas. How can I make this less vulnerable to AI? And it will give you solutions. It can be an excellent thought partner in terms of, planning and PLCs and things like that. I like to think of it as a virtual PLC member to extend my planning. But I know we have some brilliant panelists. I know Pascal's going to talk to us about using AI tools specifically for assessment. But for my piece, I wanted to focus on ways that we can take tasks that we may already be using and just make them more AI resistant. So Claire, that about wraps it up for me. I hope I stayed within the time.
You
I'll
did. You
stop the
did
share.
fantastically. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mandy.
Mhm.
I really loved that story there where you're talking about how your professor invited you over and you did this kind of assessment orally rather than kind of sit down and do that paper. I think that there's so much merit to that. And to be able to articulate an argument is such a skill in itself that we should really be supporting students in developing. So what a fantastic way around kind of having to push
He
people
was ahead of his time. Yeah.
that fear of kind of high stakes assessment or the fear of kind of being able to that something may be interfered with in terms of AI without it being agreed before. So thank you so much for sharing all of those insights. We're lucky that today we get an extra bonus kind of long panel discussion because we have a lot to cover. So we're going to jump straight into this next session now. So we have a truly global panel of practitioners here to share their insights and practical strategies on AI integration to support the development of assessment practices. So welcome to our panelists. We're going to start then with a very quick round of introductions and we're going to jump into our questions. Please continue to use the chat to put in any thoughts or questions that you have and we will all monitor the chat as well and answer any questions that do pop up. And I can also paste in some of these questions that we're posing to our panelists as well. So if you want to, you can also add your thoughts within the chat as well. Anyone who's kind of lifting hands, we will have the breakout session as well so that we can have more discussion with everybody else who's part of this training afterwards. Okay. So introductions to start. Tim, could you kick us off, please? Just introduce who you are and where you're joining us from.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Tim. I'm joining from Singapore. I'm the head of digital learning here at UWC in Singapore, and this is one of several kind of involvements in events that I've been doing, and it's great to hear educators from around the world talking about this stuff in such exciting ways and in empowering ways to empower our students because it's going to be present in their work lives. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And Pascal.
So good morning from New York. I'm Pascal Vada. I'm the Junior School Principal at the United Nations International School, and I'm here. As an expert, but I really like what Mandy said because I think one of my favorite quotes for AI is from Socrates when he said that I know that we know nothing. And I think that's what allows us to be here in some ways is to recognize that everything needs to be created, invented, and it's by being together that we can do that. So thanks, Mandy, for this introduction. I've been working for 18 months trying to integrate AI in school operation and for education too, but also looking at school leaders, what they can do with artificial intelligence and how we can design some AI solution that works for us because every school is different. Every teaching and learning policies are different. Every school mission are different. Every curriculum may be different too. And so how we can make sure that what we're doing with AI is going to be transformative in a good way, in respect also of what we believe is right in terms of teaching and learning. So that's my work here at UNIS, and I've been asked to share this with many other schools.
Thank you, Pascal. Mary Jane.
Hello, hi. I'm Mary Jane Newton. I am an education technologist, and I've spent the last 20 odd years creating teaching and learning platforms, tools, and services with organizations like the Oxford University Press, Macmillan Education, Imagine Learning in the States. And I understand that some of my former colleagues are on the call as well, so hello to them. And more recently with Nord Anglia Education. And look, I'm passionate about the power of education to change lives and the power of technology to change education. So thank you for today's platform and for having me.
Thank you. And Dr. Mahadra.
Hi, this is Dr. Dheeraj Mehrotra, and I'm representing GEMS Education in India as regional head. And I've been working on training, technology, and teacher resources. And I have authored around 10 books on artificial intelligence. And we have introduced in India artificial intelligence right from the middle school to class 12th. That is, we have a standardized subject with an integration of the concepts of AI as skill training. And we aim to promote the use of AI through practical applications. I have also developed apps and around 150 of them, and that has been listed in the Limca Book of Records in India. And I've authored over 100 books in general about computers and teacher training and school management. And recently, I covered around 500 plus Udemy courses, which encapsulates learning as a passion for me and teaching, of course. So I believe learning to learn should be a hobby rather than an occasional occurrence for all of us. And particularly this platform. Thank you so much, Claire, for initiating this call, which was very much required. And I wish good luck to each one of us for this session.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to jump straight into our discussion because we've got quite a few questions to get through. The very first question we have is for Dr. Mahadra. We wanted to ask you then about how can AI-driven assessment tools provide more personalised feedback to students?
Well, AI as a tool, of course, has been doing a wonderful job. But in practical reality, there is an ignorance from the side of the teachers. They feel that, yes, I'm going to catch my child, no doubt about it. I'm going to complain with the parents, but certainly I will give them the scope for improvement. There is a touch. The tech connect is making it possible. And we attend to analyze the students' data in the best of the possible ways, such as mistakes, strengths, learning gaps, and of course, tailoring the feedback is an expertise we are looking forward through these tools. As my colleague mentioned about whether they are paying attention or not, whether they are serious in the classroom because the facial expression is being observed about whether they are sleeping with their eyes open or particularly interested in the subject. And that is what the real-time feedback we are looking forward through these tools that can offer immediate actionable feedback for the teachers and mentors. But somebody rightly pointed out during the presentation that teachers are forgetting teaching rather than evaluating tools. So the real job of the teacher is to teach, to inspire. And I overheard one of the conversations somewhere about teachers to prepare children to be excited in the classroom, because the children are going to like the subject only when they like the teacher, not the technology. So that framework we should not forget. And with that preface, of course, there is a possibility of adaptive learning by tracking the progress. Of course, AI is able to adjust the learning content and even recommend the courses the child needs to have best suited for the student's proficiency level as well. But it is slow to evaluate and access because there is a peer pressure. They tend to reflect, oh, that child is into that, so let's work on that as well. So every day they change that plan, the career option, because they look for influencers. They get influenced by a doctor, they go for medicine as a career. They get influenced by someone who is innovating in technology. They say, oh, I want to go for BTech and I'm going to be writing and compiling apps and things like that. But for sure, this type of an assessment helps requite their interest in them. And the analysis assessment, which you have rightly observed, talks about the scalability, the how scalable it is with the individual focus. And I should be pointing out here about the large scale assessment, while personalizing feedback for each student has to be conducted, because then only we can frame policies for that inception. There must be lacking, and we need not find faults as heads of schools. We need to look for facts. And these facts need to be converted to how best we are going to be implementing the power of technology through goal oriented suggestions. So, of course, when we have board meetings, we always tell that this has to be a goal oriented session. Even if we have implemented the assessment tool, we need to look forward to the interest of the children as well. And for that reason, AI tools can connect feedback to the students' goals. There may be a suggestion of skills to practice to meet the curriculum standards, but for sure, it should not be just be preparing for exams. It should be preparing for life. It should be preparing for the career they are going to opt for, not just to clear with good marks. And that is what is the feedback we are looking forward. Here at GEMS Education Schools in India, particularly, we pay emphasis on the pillar of learning. The emphasis is quoted on the policies which we need to implement. And of course, taking all the stakeholders, particularly the parents, in together. We have coffee table rounds with the parents class wise, wherein they are able to get the connect the best way, because the real connect is the triangle: the student, the parent, and the principal or the teachers, the school in particular. So whatever assessment we do, we need to have a connect with the parents. They need to be informed about it, and then only we can make the progress happen. So this is known as the visualization of the feedback, and many AI tools even provide the feedback through the dashboards or the progress through charts, or maybe I recall over here the wonderful support napkin.ai is providing, that it is able to make the figure out of it, or a particular object or a text can be very well converted to a figure. The figurative format of an explanation is a wonderful clubbing idea. And of course, by combining these initiatives, I'm sure there is a perfect blend of data analysis towards the success of that school in particular. But for that reason, there has to be an apt training for the teachers. Even while assessing, they need to be apt towards the training. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So I do need to move us and continue because we do have quite a few questions to add, but there was a lot in there in terms of how we can support and provide this kind of more personalized feedback. And I think you did touch there about how this can really help support then that inclusion as well for students and making sure that we're them driving the policy within the school so that we're supporting all of those students. Thank you for those reflections. Does anybody else wanted to add anything to that and anything that they're using in terms of supporting that kind of personalized feedback? We're happy to move on. Question. Oh, sorry, Pascal.
Yeah, that's the first thing we've done in February 2023 when we got access at UNIS to the API key for OpenAI. So the possibility to integrate AI in systems. So to not have the student going directly in ChatGPT, but see if we can create a layer between the students and the AI system to provide feedback to the students. So it was before Magic School or all this application that exists because it did not exist yet. And it was very interesting. Like the system was providing feedback based on the intention of the teachers. And so very quickly, we feel that that was the way to go, to tune the system so it works for us.
Thank you. We're going to jump into our next question. This is for Mandy. And so I wanted to ask you about the ethical considerations that educators should keep in mind when using AI for assessment. I think this is something that's come up quite a lot in people's kind of fears about AI and how they're using this. So what are some of the privacy and data security risks associated with AI in student assessment, and how might we mitigate these? Oh, Mandy, sorry, you're on mute at the moment.
I realized it as soon as I started talking. Thank you. Yes, that is a very important issue. And I think the conversation about personalized learning and feedback kind of lends itself naturally to this because while we're giving these personalized feedbacks to students, it's based on data that we're collecting from them. And so we need to be really mindful of what data is being collected and how it is being used. So what is often unrealized about AI is that often data that goes into the AI system is used to further train the system. And so in the US, students own the copyright to their work. So without their permission and without being transparent about how we're using their work that we're uploading into these AI systems, you run the risk of not having informed consent. You expose their data possibly to breaches. You possibly could run afoul of data privacy laws, and around the world there are different things. In the US we have FERPA and COPA. I know Europe has the GDPR, and there are different things around the world. And so it's really important that you, whenever you're using an AI tool to conduct assessments, that you go through those terms of use with a fine-tooth comb and ask a lot of questions about the data that's being collected, where it's being stored, because the data that's collected is subject to the laws where it is stored physically. So if it's on a server in another part of the world, you want to make sure that its privacy laws align with yours. You want to make sure that you have robust privacy policies in place at the school or district level, and that you have a process where an informed person is vetting these tools to making sure that they are secure. You want to make sure you're using a tool with end-to-end encryption. You want to make sure that the tool is in control of the data. A lot of these tools like Magic School and things, we call them application layers because they're running on top of foundation models like ChatGPT or Meta's Llama or things like that. So you want to make sure that the data is being protected by the third-party application and it's not going into training the foundation model. And finally, you want to conduct regular audits to make sure that things are continuing to be secure, and train your staff to make sure that they understand like the privacy issues associated with these tools, what kinds of information we can enter into them and what we cannot, and making sure that everyone is kind of collectively protecting student privacy.
Thank you. Thank you for kind of covering quite a lot there. Was there anything else anybody wanted to add? Yeah, it did feel like a very succinct and fully developed answer. Thank you, Mandy. And so we're going to, if anybody has any other questions that come up in the chat, then please do put them in, and we can, answer some of these questions as well as we go through in the chat. Pascal, you're going to answer our next question. I wanted to ask, how can educators and administrators best prepare students for an AI integrated assessment system?
So it's a big question that can be seen with many different angles. So I'm going to, and I've listed a couple of elements that I think school need to look into. Some very specific to assessment, but some also related to the bigger question of AI and education. And so the first element I think it's really critical for us to be able to do a good job with integrating AI in the teaching and learning practices in our school is to be able to use it and to see the possibilities, to explore, to take some risk, to navigate this revolution and to be part of it. And I think it's very important to not only do it from a teaching and learning angle, but to do it on a school operation, a leadership, administration angle. Because if, and I was in a conference in Toronto last week, and I was sitting at a table with a colleague from another school who was very puzzled by how I could really support the school and education. And after spending a couple of minutes with him and see the possibilities, he was suddenly very open to say, oh my God, we can do that. And so if he doesn't see the possibilities as a head of school or as a curriculum director, it's unlikely that those administrations are going to be able to support the teachers in integrating AI in their instruction. So I think it's a collective effort for a school in all the different dimensions, in finance, etc., to be able to see the possibilities, to go beyond the border of the school and to see what outside the school we are doing already with AI and how it's transformative for some startup, big companies, etc. So we can see those possibilities and inspire the change. The other element that is important is we need to be able to have expertise in schools. And I think 20 years ago, we're starting to see the first tech integrator in school. We're going to see some AI director, sorry, my daughter just next to me waiting for a class. We're going to start to see some experts in schools, director of AI, etc. And schools need to be able to start to think about it and budget here. The other thing is we need to be able to train a source of form of AI that work for us. My school has a very specific teaching and learning policy that can be very different than the school that team has, where team is in Singapore. And when you use ChatGPT today, regardless of where we are, what is our philosophy, what are our teaching and learning policies, the AI is going to give us some answer that doesn't take this context in consideration. So we need to train AI and we need to look at the possibilities, and our IT director is looking at those possibilities today to be able to have in-house AI that are trained, that can be even hosted on our server, which solves some problem on privacy and can connect with our data, but doing things that we want it to do for us. The other thing that we need to look at is we need to think about the skills that everybody needs to be able to develop. So I'm just going to share you here, just here on the side here. And I don't know if everybody can see me in full screen, Claire. I'm not sure because I see you in full screen. So, well, so maybe that would be better later. This is Beyond Education. It's an organization that's working on the skills of the 21st century. The soft skills of yesterday are going to be the hard skills of tomorrow. Yesterday, the hard skills were really the mathematic concept and literacy, etc. And working on the creativity, critical thinking, communication, etc. Where the soft skills, well, it's probably going to turn around. And so this is an organization, for example, that have developed some very specific skills that look in a world with AI. And that's what schools are going to have to do to get ready. I have a few more points to share with you, Claire. We need to ask the critical question beyond technology. What is good instruction? What is learning? And I honestly have seen so many examples of using AI for education where we completely lose sight of what is good instruction. It becomes really like top-down way of teaching where a student is going to listen to something that always have the truth. The hallucination are going to go away. And the kids are just going to, they're not interacting. They're not challenging. Learning is to be able to deconstruct our initial representation in a challenge, in an interaction with others that we believe we can challenge. Another thing also, we need also to redefine it. So instruction, and I think Mandy touched it in our presentation here. we need to think of what is good instruction, but what is instruction with AI, because AI is not going to go away. So we need to redefine schools today that work with complex projects in this interdisciplinary, where the teachers are coach, are probably going to do a better job than schools who are teaching top-down students, because that's going to be very difficult in that model. So thinking about good instruction, and we need also to have a voice, come all together and work with the tech leaders, the tech companies, the policymaker, the philosopher, in order to be able to define what is AI for education and not let others decide for us. And the last point is really regarding assessing. So all these touch assessing, but my last point is this one, Claire. Assessing, when a student, we know, and we said that in progressive school, it's about a process. And Mandy was saying that in her presentation. The learning is a process, it's not just the outcome. Assessing a student is the same thing. It's not just to see a grade or a comment at the end of a process. It's about the teachers being able to get knowledgeable over their students. And if we use, and I will show you some example of later, if we use AI to assess our student, which can do some work here, but we need to be careful here, we might lose sight of our student. Assessing a student is not only a grade, it's also being able to be close to the student, see the process with the student. So if tomorrow we collect a lot of data from our students with the support of AI, which can do a work that is absolutely mind-blowing in some ways, in terms of data collection and analysis, we might lose something that is very important, is how my student is really doing in the class. Why this grade? Why this final comment here that I got? What did I miss in this journey? Assessing is a journey. So AI need to collaborate with us and not give us the answer the same way that Mandy was talking for the student. We need to see it the same way for the teachers.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Pascal. And yeah, there was a lot of information in there. And, all of this will be available again to rewatch afterwards in the recording. Is there anything else anybody wanted to add to this? I think it was, again, a really succinct answer. No panelists. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to move us straight on. Like I said, there's opportunity for us to talk more with our attendees afterwards in the breakout session for those who'd like to do that. So Tim, we wanted to go on to you and ask you next. As students integrate AI into their working practices and curriculum time is freed up, how should educators approach deciding what to teach?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Pascal, that was I love that graphic, and I think that those kind of skills are a really important part of the answer to that question, and I think that you've got whether or not curriculum time will be freed up kind of depends on what you're assessing. So whether you're sort of following the same kind of, international curriculum, or whether you're sort of reaching out beyond that to say, you know what, a student doesn't need to memorize 57 formulas for high school science anymore. But what they might need to do, which AI can't do and isn't feasibly going to be able to do in any kind of time frame that we might see over the next, decade or so, while this technology changes, is things like applying that in your personal context to your personal experiences, and bringing out what you bring as a human and your experiences to what's happening either in your classroom or in the world or in your local community or in your school community. And so I think that the 3 or 4 maybe things that we need to teach are those kind of human things that we can bring to the table. And we already do, lots of schools already do a great job of this. And it's all over our sort of mission statements, and it's all over our websites, and we talk a good talk about it a lot of the time. But it's about making students super curious, and nurturing their curiosity about the world around them, and their culture, and their personal experiences, and what they bring to the classroom that's different from all the other kids that are there. It's their critical thinking. It's what they how they can analyze things, but also like things like ethical judgments, like what's right. Like AI can't tell you what's right or wrong. And actually, if you try and push it into telling you what's right or wrong, it's a kind of weird journey to go on. And then the lots of people have mentioned it already, but the human connection, like how do we nurture the human connections that happen in the classroom, and the whole one of the biggest points of school has always been human connection, and the sort of like, oh, school won't be necessary anymore because we can all just learn with our own individual personalized tutor that's inside our Google glasses or whatever. That's not a real scenario, because that's not the only reason that people go to school. So I think that what we need, if we're going to teach those things, we need to figure out how to assess those things. And that's the hard bit, because if you just say we're going to do them, but then you assess something else, they fall off, or they become kind of second tier, or we're like, oh yeah, we kind of do that, but really we're focused on everyone getting A's because that's great for our transcripts. And so what we need to do is figure out ways to assess. So just not to like super, promote our school above any others, because I'm sure loads of schools are already doing stuff like this. But just some examples, like if you're going to assess for curiosity, like at the moment I'm running a high school physics lab where students bring in some sporting equipment from their sport of choice, and they figure out an experiment that they want to do to sort of rationalize the forces involved, which forces we're trying to maximize, which forces we're trying to minimize, and they do an experiment that's relevant for them, and it's going to help them in their sport. Now, that's not groundbreaking. That's not like a crazy, whoa, that's an amazing assessment. That's stuff that all sorts of schools are doing. But it's stuff that's nurturing their curiosity. And if we can figure out how to assess that curiosity through assignments like that, then we're assessing things that AI can't do, and we're assessing the human stuff that students bring. So critical thinking, any question that starts with should is a great question to ask in an assessment, because that's critical thinking, that's ethical judgment, that's contextually relevant, that's culturally relevant. Should this be allowed? Like, should one of our assessment questions for, again, science teacher, so one of our science assessment questions, should UWC only allow electric vehicles on campus? And so they do like air quality testing in near the pickup drop-off points, but then they also look at the sort of locals near a lithium mine and see how they feel about electric vehicles. Like, those kind of should questions bring so many human perspectives into play, and it gets students to really be thinking critically and be really making sort of ethical judgments. So there are loads of ways that people are doing already throughout schools that assess brilliantly the human skills that we need to bring to the table and that we need to be nurturing in our students. Because when our middle schoolers go into the workplace in 8 years or 10 years or whatever it is, they're going to be faced with a workplace that's full of AI, and they need to bring loads of human stuff to that table in order to A, get the job, and then B, do well in it. So we need to be nurturing those skills, and the way to nurture them is to figure out how to assess them.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think that actually ties really nicely into our next question, which Mary was going to answer for us. And so we wanted to ask you, Mary, about your recommendations for educators who are looking to take part in conversations on education and assessment reform in response to the development of AI. What are the best practices for selecting and implementing AI tools for assessment in international environments?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. That is a lovely question to end on, because I am going to, draw little strands to each and every speaker we've had today. I think for me, it's three pieces of advice. The first is to stay informed and build capacity. As educators, we have the responsibility to understand the fundamentals of AI, what it can do, what it can't do. And importantly, as Mandy said, understand how AI tools process data and how they generate outputs. And then it's PD, it's conversations like this one. So participating in workshops and conferences, engaging in conversations about ethical AI. This technology is new. We're still figuring out what good looks like. Mandy said it, nobody's an expert here. So asking those questions about data protection, privacy, bias, inclusion, you name it. And Dr. Mehrotra, you said, to cast your net wide, engaging in exchanges with as broad a set of stakeholders as you can. Yes, your fellow educators, but also policymakers, edtech developers, parents, Pascal, you said philosophers. Yes, having those conversations and including students in those conversations as well. I think that has come up. I recently attended a wonderful launch at the Turing Institute that was held together with Lego. They are embarking on a big piece of research. You should look into it, on the voices of students and AI. And then secondly, it's sharing your knowledge. Be generous about this. We're all in this together. Try the tools out, monitor them, evaluate them, see what they do. If you can, in diverse educational contexts, because I think that's going to shed quite a bit of light on how different tools can differ in different contexts. And measuring effectiveness. It's not, again, somebody else said, is there alignment with learning objectives? Were there learning gains? Is it engaging? Sometimes we do still see AI used just for the sake of it, and that is not what we need. Great instruction is great instruction always, with AI or without it. And then finally, I think is to sort of join in the conversation around the potential that AI has in redefining assessment. It has the power to make thinking visible, to make thinking processes visible, and shifting assessment finally away from the product to the process. And I think that probably is its greatest potential. And circling back to Tim, your point, really thinking about the power that AI has to make us, to make us question our value as human beings. Competencies like critical thinking, you said it, Tim, ethical judgment, creativity, empathy, problem solving, all those wonderful things. And I think hopefully this conversation, will make us think more deeply about that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mary. And I think there's an opportunity, obviously, for us to talk at length now in the breakout rooms, to kind of delve in and talk a little bit more with everybody who's here actually in the webinar. And we are running out of time, and I would really like to, if you are able to stay in this webinar for an additional 10 minutes, Pascal has just got some research that he has done within his international school that he would love to share with you. It's an incredible experiment that he has done where he has implemented AI to kind of grade some papers. So it would be fascinating to learn about this. For those who do need to go, I know that we did say an hour, so for those who do need to drop out now, I am just going to post the certificate link, and I will also post the link if you'd like to join our breakout session afterwards. But please do stay for the extra 5-10 minutes if you can, to just hear from Pascal on this experiment. Okay, I'm just going to then spotlight you, Pascal, to share this. And the link is there in the chat for everybody who may need it, who might need to shoot off now.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. So I'm going to share with you when we discussed with Claire about this webinar here. I wanted to be able to explore what would happen if I will use AI bot to assess students, and what I wanted to be able to see is the consistency of the grade. So what I've done is I have designed 10 different bots with different prompts, but slightly similar, but prompt that could be written by teachers who have the same goal, but they will write differently, because some words can have an impact on how the AI is going to create an output. I created also an assignment in humanities 7th grade with some very specific rubrics, and I've created also a 3 student submission for this assignment. And I asked the 10 bots, so I designed a system that all the bots were going to work together. And in a couple of seconds, I got 750 grades for the 3 students, because each bot has assessed 25 times the students. And I collected the grade. What I was asking to the bot is just a grade. And so here, the results of this. So it's not necessarily super highly scientific, but it's still a good numbers of data points in order to be able to have some reflection here. So give me 1 second here. Yeah, voilà. So the first student is Paul. I'm going to talk to you very briefly about Paul. Paul it's moderate quality submission. He adhered to the basic assignment requirement, but lacked depth and sophistication in his work. Juliette contains substantial inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and organizational issues, making it challenging you will see for the bot to assess her. It looks great, but he made some like huge confusion between the history of China, Egypt, and Greece, and it's really not great. But she make a great effort in writing. And Lucy, my daughter name, just to take an example here, she has a very high quality assignment, super like she scored like super high in all the different rubrics. So very three different profile here. So so that was Paul, and this is Lucy, and this is let's go directly to the result. So here is some first result that we can see here. And so we can see on the right, Lucy, the range of score for Lucy, very short, and the average for each bot is quite similar. So a student who is doing really great, the AI is going to give a really great score that is probably likely to be in line with what the teacher will do. For Paul, which is like a moderate quality, the range of the grade is already pretty high, but the average is still, it's probably not acceptable anyway, to be honest. But I would say that if you do this survey with human assessor, you will probably a result that will be very close to what we have with Paul. So AI is not necessarily doing better or worse than any other teacher group of teachers assessing students in some ways here. The third one, Juliet, is interesting because the range is huge. It's a very big range from 10 to 30, and in fact even more. So let's look here, for example, for Lucy. You can see the two bots, the bot that was most consistent and the least consistent. So you can see that the red line is the bot number 8, where at some point score at 44 and at other point 48. So it's a 4 distance. So you can see at the bottom here, it's quite acceptable average here. If we look at Paul, you can see here it's a bit more like problematic with the bot number 4 that can assess to 35 and to 22. So that's a pretty big gap here for the same student, right? Let's see now, let's see Juliet. So Juliet go from 8 to probably like 28. So it's a 20-point gap here. It's quite a gigantic gap here. So if we look at the distribution of the score, in green is Juliet. So you can see she got a lot of grades that are similar, and the range is narrow, and the numbers of grades similar is pretty consistent. So this is a really good, that's what we want. And that's probably doing a better job if it will be for any type of student that what we could do as assessor based on research that showed the inconsistency in grading. Now, if you look now at Juliet, this is where you can see the range and the fact that it's very inconsistent. So this graph, I think, is very interesting here. So if we look a bit of like, let's try to explore why it's doing this, the hypothesis, is by far you see there is a clear alignment with the rubric, with the work. The submission is pretty high. The prompt, but again, the prompts were quite similar for all the teachers, but we got here for a student that is really high, some consistency. If we look for Paul, Paul is quite average here, there is no confusion in the work he's doing. It's just not really high quality. And in some way, the rubrics still work pretty well. But if we look again at Juliet, I think it's the ambiguity. There is a lot of ambiguity in the work for Juliet. And again, this is my assumption here. We need to spend a bit more time reflecting, but there is a problem with the accuracy of our work where the AI might be challenged into aligning the rubric with the assessment, and where we may take some freedom as teacher at some point because it's so inaccurate that we can't give a high grade. Maybe here the AI is struggling in looking at each rubrics independently of everything else. Maybe that's something we should do in some ways, but that's the result here is too inconsistent. So some reflection that we need to have. We need to make sure if we want to use AI for assessment, first we shouldn't probably do it now because we need to do a lot of tests in order to see if it's accurate. Even though there is a research in Princeton that was showing that we can grade with AI. Yes, we can grade with AI, but we need to know how we grade. So very good rubric. We need to calibrate the AI. We need to have a human oversight, which is something that Mandy will agree in her presentation, like it's a collaboration, and we need to continue to train AI. So it's likely that at some point we will be in a good place because we see how it improve. But with this small experiment here that I share very quickly with you, we can see that if we just decide to use AI for grading without having a reflection, tuning, testing, etc., we're probably not going to have a really great result. Voilà.
Thank you, and thank you. Sorry, that was a little bit of a whistle-stop tour through that research. You did that fantastically, and I know we were under those time constraints. But thank you so much for carrying out that research and for sharing it with us. And we would love to share that and maybe go into a little bit more detail as well separately on the ISM platform so that we can really dig into those results. But it was wonderful to see then that research and see how highly effective it can be then for those high attaining students, but actually then how that drops off for those students who are then middling and then with lower achievement as well. So it'd be great to kind of drill into those results a little bit more and learn a little bit more about that. Okay.
Can I horribly abuse my position as a panelist and ask a question?
Go for it.
Pascal, one of the things that jumped out to me thank you very much. That was awesome, by the way. I've never seen research like that, and it was really, really interesting. So thank you for sharing it. One of the things that I took from it was that actually a lot of it was about a lot of the failure of the AI was about misinterpretation or differing interpretation of rubrics. Do you just think we need to make our rubrics better, or do you think it's the AI that's at fault?
I think it's probably both. We need to have, if we use AI, we need to be extremely specific in the rubrics. The rubrics were great. I have to be honest. I was pretty happy with my rubrics. And for a teacher, it's the question of interpretation and taking in consideration context, which AI is capable of doing with the way that AI is designed, can take some background, some context. We see that in translation, for example. But we need to be probably, when we have an implicit context ourselves in our school, when we look at the rubrics, we need to do more work with the AI to provide this context. So better rubrics, more detail, how to align it, how to look at confusion in the content. I don't know. We need to be much more precise in the way we design it. And we need also to probably wait also some other version of AI, which is likely to blow our mind very soon.
Okay, thank you. So we can continue this discussion. We are going to jump now into our Zoom meeting so that we can do some breakout with those who would like to attend. And we have a couple of questions that we'd like you to look at and to share your experiences within your international school. It's an opportunity then to just kind of talk about the training a little bit more and share together. Pascal.
Claire, I just want to add something because I think team question is very important. It's really show that anything that we're going to get with AI, it's our responsibility to be able to do it the right way. So it's not just to wait for AI to do something for us. It's for us to be able to design our prompts, our direction, our collaboration in a way that will provide the success. And that's why we need ourselves, all of us, to understand how it works so we get better at using it.
Thank you.